My name is Abdel Morshed. I go by the artist name Habit701, and I am an artist from Morocco originally, and I grew up in Chicago. I like to create all kinds of art. I try not to put myself into a specific category. Like, I have a background in traditional painting, oil painting. I've done, acrylic painting, oil painting, graffiti, spray paint, aerosol, airbrushing at one point. Any kind of material that I can get my hands onto will be the art that I'm trying to make. The first artwork that I ever remember making was in kindergarten, and I think we had a story read to us of some kind, and I don't really remember the story, but I can remember the image that I painted, and it was a character in the book. I was working on it while my dad actually came in, but they loved it. They kind of looked at my dad and said that he's got a talent. So I just remember that one because, my dad's an artist, I'm an artist, and having the compliments from my dad and from my teacher were kind of a moment that I can't really forget. His father, my grandfather, didn't entirely encourage making art. He wanted my dad to kind of just get a regular job. The difference is that me growing up, my father actually encouraged the art that I produce. And we produced work together as well, so there was always a moment of creation. The word I would use is resourceful. What I try to do is just create with what I have available. That mentality was kind of something that my father raised me with. And is just sort of the mentality of my background, being Moroccan. We don't have access to a lot of different things, but we have this saying that if you can't buy it or you can't find it, then you make it. So this project that I have right now, I'm working on making a Nike shoe. It's the Air Jordan 1. It's a shoe that I grew up with, and before we get into the history of that, the shoes that I make now are usually, majority of them are made from found items like restaurant menus, scrap paper, things that are thrown away. My very first shoe that I made was out of Chicago parking tickets. It's whatever I can get a hold of at that time is what I create. What makes the Nike Air Jordan 1 special to me is because I grew up with this shoe. When my father and I moved to the United States, we didn't have much. There was no dining room table, there was no couch. There was just the floor and a TV. Some of my very first memories are watching the Bulls, Michael Jordan, Dennis Rodman, Tony Kukoc, Scottie Pippen, a lot of those guys, Steve Kerr, all playing for the Chicago Bulls. And it felt like every single year we were winning a championship. I grew up with that memory, and when we did have when we could afford more things, eventually we got a couch and eventually we got a dining room table. But one of the first gifts or things that I remember my father giving me was he gifted me a pair of Air Jordans, the very first ones. I immigrated in '92. I think those shoes may have come out in '93. So he gave them to me as a gift for getting good grades in school. He actually did the same thing for my cousin as well. Whenever he got good grades in Morocco, he would send him a pair of Air Jordans. And that was kind of the custom, the tradition. Going back to when I first came to America and not having any money, I was wearing shoes that didn't fit me. One of my toes is still curled up from that time. I remember not being able to afford those shoes or any kind of shoes, and we went to the store one day to finally get a pair of shoes for me. And I remember the guy who was helping us was telling my dad, they're like, he's wearing shoes that are way too small for him, and his toes are starting to curl up because they're just bunched up at the top. And so they got me a pair of shoes that actually fit. So I had the functional shoes, and then after that, my dad finally bought me a nice pair of Air Jordans, and I'll never forget it.
At the buzzer, Michael Jordan has won it for Chicago.
So the first time that I decided to do the artwork with the Nike shoe was when I had just seen the movie that came out about the story about the Air Jordan. It was such a good movie, and it took me back to my childhood and getting the Air Jordans. I had just gotten a parking ticket on my company car at the time. I was working for a small company, and they gave me a car as part of the contract. And I got my first parking ticket in I don't know how long. I remember I had two options at that point. I could either get really frustrated and angry, or I could think of something creative to do with the shoes or with the ticket. So I made two pieces of art out of the ticket. And then I started collecting more tickets just from other people, because I had this idea that I could, you know, even though I paid the ticket and spent money on it, I could now make artwork that was different. The Chicago parking ticket shoe is super bright orange. You can see it from down the street when you get a ticket. You know you've gotten a ticket, 2 blocks away. After I made that one, it got a lot of attention and a lot of support. And then I thought to myself, I could make more of these. I have all these great ideas of making this shoe. From there, I just started collecting everything that I could, from parking tickets to street signs, street notices, anything that I could get my hands on, I would make it. So the next shoes that I made after that actually were airline tickets. I took airline tickets. They were all my tickets, every place that I've been to, that I've flown to. And I collect these kinds of things because I just never know what I'm gonna do with it. So I have this huge collection of airline tickets of all these different destinations all around the world. And I made my next one out of all these tickets. And it's actually the only shoe that has hand stitching in it. So the stitching looks exactly the same as the original shoe. It's actual stitching. I hand stitched every single piece of it. That one is probably one of my favorites. But yeah, the parking ticket and then the airline ticket are my two first ones. And I still have both of those. Both of those will be in the show. I like to travel and I like to get uncomfortable. I like to put myself in situations where I learn and am challenged by my environment. Traveling, connecting with people, experiencing something that's different than what I'm used to. Barcelona has been a huge inspiration on my work. I used to live here for 4 years, and a lot of the people, the art, the architecture are the kinds of things that inspire a lot of my work, especially Gaudi. Being here and being in this environment, like every single day I'm motivated, I'm inspired, not just by the environment, but also by the people that are in this city. The people that I meet really get me motivated and creative. And I feel like everything is kind of possible here. So environment does help, but in my work as an artist, you never know where you're gonna be, and you never know when you're gonna have to make something or create something. And so I try to be as adaptable as I can and go with the flow of what the environment is. So if I only have certain things available in this place, then that's what I'll use. And if I have other materials in another place, then that's what I'll use. I think the most important message, and especially with this show, and more so the shoe, I should say, the shoe itself, is whenever I've felt down in life and I've felt like I'm completely lost, or I've lost hope, or I just feel like giving up, a lot of the times the first thing that we do when we're in that situation is we look down at our shoes. We look down at the ground because we're sad. And when I look down, I look at my shoes and I think about every single place that they've taken me, every single thing that I've done in those shoes, who I've been with, where I've been, what places I've traveled to, how far I've had to walk, whether it's up a hill or down a hill or through a river or on top of a mountain or next to a glacier. When I look at my shoes, I can tell a story of everything that I've been through. That's what these shoes have taught me, is that you're not hopeless, that you can keep walking and you can keep going. And so what I really want from this is You know, this has taken 3 years to make the show, and really it's a dedication of my love and a dedication of my expression and what I feel inside. For me, it's my motivation, it's my hope for continuing to walk on no matter how difficult things get. I want people to walk away with that sense that there's nothing that's meaningless or unimportant or not attainable if you just put your shoes on, tie up those laces, and you get out the door and you explore and see what kind of connections you can